Hi, my name is Arthur Bruis, and in this video we're going to take a look at how to call web APIs using M-code from a Dataflow or Power Query. First things first, let's take a look at what is actually a web API. It stands for Application Programmers Interface. So actually we as BIers are not really the target audience for these things. It's more meant for application programmers that build applications like mobile apps or web applications, and they need a way to go to a service and get some data and insert, update and delete some data. And that's also a problem that we sometimes get too much data from this web API and we overload the server and we get all kind of error messages. But let's take a look at how the concept works. So Power Query and Dataflows act as a client. It's going to connect to a server via HTTP. And then we get the data back in, it used to be XML format, and that it used to be SOAP APIs. So sometimes you still see them like a legacy systems, but nowadays they're not created anymore. Nowadays it's all about the JSON. This is a way more compact format, and it's also very compatible with JavaScript, because these are basically JavaScript objects that you're sending across the line. And this is what they call RESTful APIs. And you can also on top of that have like an OData protocol to query the REST API, like do a select and a where and a join. So that's really easy. And of course you need some authentication. Let's take a look at how it started. The web APIs back in 2001. The SOAP was introduced by Don Bucks at Teget. And it was created by Microsoft and other vendors like IBM. And it has a lot of features, but it's not simple, it's very complicated. But can do a lot of things, especially in a service-oriented architecture. That's where you saw the SOAP APIs. How does it look like? We do requests from the client to the server. We send an envelope to the server within there a body and what you want as a parameter to set. I want to call this method and I want to set this parameter. And then in response you get back again an envelope within the body, the response of this function. It's all very much XML, and it's very complicated. So there came in another movement, that's what I call REST. REST is not simple in the name because it stands for representational state transfer. That's a complicated thing. Somebody did a PhD on this, so that's always a little bit complicated. But the concept is to make it very simple. And the true believers of this, also called the Rastafarians, they found so way too complicated. So they said, why not just use the standard HTTP operations like get, post, put, patch and delete to do like the insert, update, delete and the select. And then everything becomes a lot simpler. You specify the parameters either in the URL or in the query string. And then look something like this. I do a get, I'm gonna get shares .com stock IBM. I want to get a quote for that, and then what do you get back? You can just get back the stock quote, either in XML or in JSON. Most REST APIs you can choose. Do you want XML output or JSON? That's not really that important because the JSON is not that much smaller than the XML in this case. So how does it look like internally? So first, if you go to HTTP, we get a lot of methods like the get and the post. In REST APIs, you normally use the get if you want to get some data. So we're going to focus on the get. And then you need a URL, and in the URL, we're going to set all the parameters. And we need a protocol, that's HTTP. And we also need to set an accept header. So what do we want data-wise? Do we want XML or JSON? So these are the types that you normally use. And then the client will also be sent to the server. In our case, that's Power Query. And then we get a response back, hopefully. We get the response code, the 200, that's okay. And then we get the content type, that's what we got. So we ask for XML, and hopefully we'll also get XML. But sometimes you get something else. And here is the XML that we want to work with. Let's take a look at some of the status codes that you can encounter. 200 is okay, that's what you want to get. And sometimes the URL is being redirected, so the URL has been modified, so you get a 3 or 4. Or maybe you don't have permission. maybe do bad requests with some bad parameters that the server doesn't understand, or you're simply not authorized to access this data. So the server knows who you are, but you're still not authorized to access that specific data. And it can also be that you're forbidden. So yeah, you're not authorized, for example, or you're not authenticated correctly, then you get a 4 or 3. But it can also be that something happens at the other side, that there's a bug in the server, or maybe you set some strange parameter settings, combinations, and then you get a server error. That can happen. What you can also have, especially for BI people, maybe we want to do too many requests. So we're going to call the API too many times in a minute. And then it's get overloaded and you'll be throttled. So it'll be slower, or you'll get these kind of messages. Okay, let's take a look at an example. Let's take a demo. I want to get this REST API. This is about Formula 1 data, and I want to get the races of a specific year. Let's see how we do this in Power Query and using the language M. First, let me show you the URL. So if I go to the URL, here I get some HTML back. But if I do it from Power Query, so I can just start with doing it via the user interface. That's always a good way to get started. I'm just going to connect to a web API, and then I specify the URL, and I'm going to click OK. Then you can test it out and see if it works. And then here we get some data, and I can go to transform data to look at the Power Query. And there we have it. Here we see a race table. If you click on table, then we get another table. And maybe I want to keep like the season. That's interesting. And here I can expand. So it's really easy in Power Query to get XML. I'm not going to get everything. I just want to circuit the date and the time for now, just to give you an expression. And now you see the races. Here I have the circuit. It's another XML block. I can also zoom in there. Circuit name and location. And the location has some GPS coordinates, but I can also just have the country and so on. And so now I can get all the data I want. But this is just the data for 1 year. So let's call this the year. And we have it just for 2001. So how do I get it for all the years? Is that even possible? Yeah, so what we need to do for that is create a function out of this. So I want to create like a races per year function. For that I can go to the advanced editor, and if you want to create a function, what you need to do is add 2 round brackets, and then here we have like a year parameter. Oh, sorry. As number or as text, maybe that's better because actually this is text. So let's put it here as text, and then we do it like this, and then we get a year parameter in, and this year parameter I could put it in here. This is not a good idea. This doesn't work, but let me show you. It kind of works here, but it doesn't work in production. I'll show you in a minute why. Now I can specify year 2024, and then I'm going to invoke the function, and boom, there we have it. We have the races of 2024. And now what I need to do, I need to get like a list of years that I want to call this function for, and then just repeatedly call this function. So let me show you that. I can create like a blank query for that. I go to the advanced editor, do some M code. And here I want the list of years. I can do it using this syntax. With the curly brackets I create like an array. Here I can say I want 2020 up to 2024. And of course I can use the current year and subtract a few years from there to get like a dynamic range. But for now this is okay. Now I have a list, and here I can convert it to a table. Yes, and then here I have my year column, and this year column I can set to text. That's important, that it should match the type of the parameter, and then I can add a column and invoke a custom function. So I don't need to go into advanced editor. a lot of things you can just select here, and then you can match the year parameter with the year, and then we have the races per year, and then we can expand them. And there we have it. You have the 2020 races and the 2021, 2022, and so forth. So this is really easy to get all the data in. One problem still is this function is not going to work in the Power BI service. Why so? Because this is a data source, and a data source should have a fixed URL. You cannot mess around with the data source URL. It should be fixed. But then how to change like this parameter? We have a trick for that. Let me show you. So instead of manipulating the base URL, I keep this the same, but I'm going to specify here, comma, and then between square brackets, I'm going to define an options object. And in this options object, I'm going to specify a property, relative path equals 2021. And this is what I'm going to use in this function. And it will look then in the end like this. So I still have the year parameter, it's coming in. And then here I have between the square brackets, relative path, and there I'm going to use the year parameter. And then everybody's happy, and then it will just work. If you want to see more about this and using M code to do all kinds of nice things, take a look at the site Fabric Code. We have a lot of other videos and articles about this. Hope to see you there.